I've got a challenge for you, and it's quite good fun actually. Your challenge is to create a piece of artwork in a similar way to what Cold War Steve does. Right? If you don't know, Cold War Steve is a UK artist, and he creates mashups a bit like this. And he's also created mashups for Time magazine, and he creates jigsaw puzzles that you can buy, and so on. So it's quite funny. There's just some random setting with random people, and sometimes he swaps heads over. But there's always a particular person that appears in his mashups. Just going through, I don't know if you can tell. Obviously, got Vladimir Putin in both of those too. But there's a particular character that always appears. It's this guy here. This is Steve McFadden, who plays the infamous Phil Mitchell in EastEnders, who randomly appears in every picture, which is a bit odd. Anyway, how do we go about creating them, and what will we learn? Well, we'll learn about some different types of graphics and how to manage graphics with transparent backgrounds. Right, let's get going. First job is to find some random setting. So head over to whichever search engine you want to use, click onto images. But just before you do your search though, change the option here to large, right, or the biggest option that there is available. So we don't want a really small tiny image that we then have to stretch and then it goes all pixelated and horrible, so we want a really big image to begin with. So what I did is I found this image here. When you find an image, it's a good idea to find one that's got some kind of windows in it, because then you can have like pictures of people's heads sticking out of the windows, which could be quite good fun. Once you've found the image, click onto View File to get to the original. Now if that doesn't work for whatever reason, just choose a different image. Right mouse click, and then save it somewhere where you're not going to forget where it is. Right, so once we've got a background image, we then want some other images. So here's one I found earlier of Boris, but this time, again I've chosen large, but I've also chosen this option that says transparent. So this file here, which I found of Boris, it's transparent. This is what's called a PNG file, and PNG files are different to JPEGs in a number of ways, but one way in which they were different is that it's possible to have a transparent background in them. So right mouse click, save your image. So find some images of people that have transparent backgrounds. Now if you find an image that doesn't have a transparent background, don't worry, because we can use AI, artificial intelligence, to help us. So here's a tortoise I found earlier on, so I downloaded that one, and then I went to Pixlr.com. Sign in. You should know how to do that already. Remember, if you don't have an account, sign up using your school email address. That's very important. And Pixlr have got this cool option that says remove BG, short for background. So I can open an image, for example our lovely tortoise image, and then using the magic of AI, dun 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 dun, twiddle fingers, it will automatically remove the background. Now it might not work if the image that you're trying to cut out is very similar to the background, right? So think carefully about the image that you want to use. Now it is possible to manually remove the background, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a jiffy. So you can download that, and then that will enable you to incorporate that into your image. Or there's another one I got earlier on of Joe Biden, and this is essentially what we're trying to create, something that looks a little bit bizarre, a little bit weird like this. So how did I do it? So Pixlr.com, and then head over to the Pixlr E editor. So I'm going to start a new one. I'm going to call it Mashup 2, and for the size I'm going to choose this one called Web. But whatever you do, do not share your images on the internet, because you don't necessarily have permission to use the images that you use from the internet, right? So this is just something for a little bit of personal fun. If you wish to share your images, then you should always acknowledge the author or get permission, or sometimes in some cases you need to pay to use the images that you use. Or because something's on the internet, don't assume that you can use it for whatever you want for free, because you can't. It's illegal. Okay, create. So, similar to what you've done before, hopefully, you just simply go to Layer, and then Add Image as Layer. So, from here, I'm going to choose our lovely abandoned warehouse. There it is. Now, it's not quite big enough, so I'm going to make it slightly bigger. But, you know, if your image is this big and then you make it this big, right, it will go all pixelated and horrible. So even this image, as I make this a little bit bigger, you can tell it's a little bit pixelated, where we can start to see the individual pixels that make up the image. But there we go. Anyway, that's our background image. So we can just simply continue doing this. So layer, add images layer. So let's find Boris on his zip wire. Where should we put Boris? I put him on the roof before. Stick him back there. There we go. And you'll see that it's put in a new layer here. So layer, add images layer. And it's a little bit bizarre, a little bit random, but that's the whole idea. We can add a gigantic tortoise. Now you can also use this at the top to rotate the tortoise. So we're going to have a random giant tortoise. I rotated that possibly a little bit too much on our roof. What about that? And let's add another one, a layer, add images layer. Those of you who are fans of the show might possibly recognize this image, which could just be poking in from the side there. Now if I don't want part of this image, I could very carefully, with this layer selected, right, with the sausage layer, just use our marquee tool to select part of it, and I can go edit, cut, and then it will look like it's just poking in from the side there. And what else have we got? Image layer, rather, add image as layer. And we've got Biden. Now I want to put Biden, oh, edit undo, in here, right? Now, similar to as before, I'm just using the wheel to zoom in. Similar to before, I want some of this background image to become the foreground. Right, you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to click back onto our background layer, and using my marquee tool, I'm just going to select the parts that I want to be in the foreground. So hold down the Shift key, and you can select multiple areas. What you can do is you can choose feather, so then it will give it a feathered edge when we create a copy of it. So hold down that Shift key, and I can select these areas. Now you can also use this lasso tool, and there's a magic wand tool you can play around with as well if you want to. So now I've got that section there, I'm going to copy that, edit copy, click away, edit, paste, and you'll see it's added this new layer, and I'm going to bring that to the top and then move that back into position wherever it was. I think it was about there. So now it looks like Biden is poking his head out the window. So you can have all sorts of fun with this. So once you've done that, you can then download the image. So you can save it and then export this as a PNG image. But that's the general idea. So it's good fun. So we've played around with PNG images, so portable network graphic images, which can have transparent backgrounds, not all the time. We've looked at the lasso, marquee tools, layers, which hopefully you're already familiar with. And if anything does go wrong at any point, just remember you can always go edit, undo, or select what you don't like and hit the delete key, and away it goes. So that's about it. See if you can create a piece of artwork similar to what Cold War Steve does, and I look forward to seeing your mashup.